Hello everyone, this is Lala, and today I'm going to be talking about the challenge Invasion of the Champions. And this was a season that I really liked when I watched it for the first time about a year or so ago. I liked how they introduced and popped up a lot of the newer stars or the newer challengers, but they also integrated them with a lot of the veterans as well. As to something that I felt like they tried to do with Battle of the Seasons 2, but they weren't as successful with it there, and something that they will do with Battle for a New Champion, but they don't do it anywhere near as well there either. I thought it was really cool to see all of the newer challengers have to live in a shelter for the first few rounds, and then they had to fight for their spot in the main house. And I really liked that twist. And then once they got into the main house, they had to interact with the champions. I still like that part of it now, and the first third is really interesting to me. Once they enter the house, you do notice that a decent amount of the storylines from the beginning don't really take off, and the twist of the season where the champions have their own game and the continuers have their own game as well is kind of disappointing. They never really go against one another, so it's kind of pointless to have them living in the same house together as well. And because of this, there's really a few rounds after they enter the house where I believe there's only like two or three eliminations that the champions had to deal with. And then it's pretty much the same thing with the underdogs. So there's a big purge that happened afterwards. And I felt like they could have paced it a bit better as well. There was still a decent amount of drama in the season, but now that I'm looking back at it and rewatching it, it really isn't the best of the best. And a lot of the people would have stronger seasons after this. But overall, I do think you start to see a lot of the trends that would enter into Era 4 with a lot of the introductions. So not the introductions, so the to be continues. This would have the very first purge, would become very prominent in Era 4, and this is the first season that they stopped doing the location change, which was a staple in Era 3. So you saw stuff like that. So overall, while I do like it, it is not one of my favorites. And I think it probably dropped a bit lower from my initial impressions watching it then and my initial impressions watching it now. Bunch of new faces are arriving to the scene and they are on boats like they are starting a Survivor season. They are in Thailand and we are introduced to Theo and Anika who fell in the water from the very last season of The Real World, or at least not including the Facebook version. And we are introduced to Shane, whose last season was season 12, which was in early era 2. He talks about how he was one of the first couples to get married in California, but was heartbroken over the divorce. Their house is a hut, more than what they get on Survivor at least, and they are all wondering where the house is, but I guess it is like the island at the beginning. Latoya is talking about how she's enjoying the environment and is a single parent by adopting a dog, and I found that to be very funny. Tony is also enjoying the scenery and he announces that he is now a father and has another one coming with his eventual wife. Amanda is a legal drug dealer in pharmaceutical sales and is putting her nursing degree aside to do the season. Daria is also getting into real estate as well. TJ shows up and mentions that the shelter is their house, where the shelter is temporary, but you have to earn your way to the oasis, so you have to win. And this will be a chance for the non winners to win a season. Eight champions are training to enter the game, and we see home footage of this, and I won't be delving much into this during the first few episodes since they are not in the game yet. Nelson talks about growing up in poverty, and Hunter, with his receding hairline, talks about being an all around athlete. Anthony wants to get into the WWE and follow the Mrs. Footsteps. Marie wants to start a tech company, and the two of them are really hitting it off, which caused them to be on X on the beach together in a few years after this. Nicole is having a panic attack because she chose the challenge over her girlfriend, who gave her an ultimatum to choose her or the show, and Nicole chose the show. She is panicking to Bruno, who was on the same real world season as her, and they are all expecting to work together. Kayla is strutting like she is on Baywatch and wants to live life because her parents got married very young and Theo missed the NFL. So he is tired of. Sorry. Theo wants to redeem himself here. Corey just wants to have fun, so he gives everyone alcohol since he's tired of everyone complaining. Kayla is really feeling Corey, and he's really feeling her as well, and people are talking about who is going to hook up. They are hardcore flirting, and people are chanting for them to hook up. Anthony also wants to hook up with a bunch of women, but he's really feeling Marie, and they are cuddling under their net. Corey speaks to Bruno since he saw the latter struggling, and Bruno is talking about being homeless, which is told to a few people. Or that has been told to a few people up until his conversation with Corey. Nelson is talking about making a legacy for himself in the challenge, and you can say that he became successful in that, but not in the way that he probably wanted. And the lines are starting to get divided slowly. The daily is the under. I don't know if they titled that correctly, but whatever. Where they have to navigate through the walls as individuals and then use the bucket of mud to go through. And then do something with ropes and get some token or whatever to put it at the top. Whomever ends up winning the daily gets some. Sorry, they get a ticket to the Oasis in the main house, and we do see a similar challenge in 39 regarding the first challenge. Tony is expecting for his skeletons people to work with him, which are Sylvia, Bruno, and Nicole, and Tony is realizing that Sylvia and Nicole really aren't working with him here. There are two teams working to get through the first point, and the tension is definitely growing. Nicole and Dario win for each of their gender, so they're going to the big house. Nelson feels offended that Tony left Bruno behind, though they were all at the last checkpoint. Marie and Bruno are in last place, so they are going into elimination. Bruno is snapping at the people who weren't helping him the way that he wanted them to help him, and Nicole is pissed off that he gave up. So they and Tony are all arguing. Nelson then gets into it for absolutely no reason and picks a fight with Tony where they have to be separated. Nelson should have minded his business. Despite all of that, no one is going to the Oasis until all the spots are earned, so Nicole and Dario are stuck living in the shelter with everyone else. They arrive home to campaign, and Bruno is feeling away about having to go back home, still homeless. Jenna mentions that she, Kayla, and Tony are together, and there are some arguments with people like Nelson, Amanda, Latoya, and some others. The three of them are getting called out for building their own group during the challenge, and Nelson calls out Kayla for being Jenna's follower. Tony defends Tony goes at Nelson about how he was crying at the challenge and he's at the bottom of the guys. And Nelson makes it very clear to Tony that he is after him, and there's just a whole bunch of fighting taking place at this point in time. Theo doesn't care about the campaign, and Jenna mentions that everyone forgot that he's in the game. And Theo really just isn't listening to her, and there's apparently some mention about them targeting one another at this point. Bruno and Nicole are talking about how he needs to survive the elimination. Nelson speaks to Sylvia about how she needs to flip to be on his side since she'll be a target otherwise, along with her skeleton allies. Sylvia then speaks to Nicole and she does not like how she has to choose a side, and Nicole is, to be fair, justifyingly expecting Sylvia to vote with them since they are from the same season. Corey speaks to Kayla about how she drew the lines in the sand way too early and mentions that a lot of the women do not like Jenna, and he's essentially trying to train Kayla as a rookie, pertaining how to play the game. But she really isn't listening to him or taking anything that he is saying in. Corey tells Kayla that all the guys put her in their top three, pertaining being the most attractive, and the two of them start making out, talking about how there's no footage of this and how they should have hooked up at the hotel. And by the hotel, we all know that the cast generally meets at a hotel before they fly to the location of the season, so that's what they're referring to. Sylvia is feeling a way about having to vote for Tony of all people. Marie and Ashley are talking about Jenna and Kayla being on the chopping block and how they need to get rid of the two women. Ashley defines politicking, where the women vote for the men and the men vote for the women. So it ends up with Tony and Kayla being nominated. The skeleton cast is furious that Sylvia nominated Tony, as Nicole mentions that she will take her out in the next challenge, and Tony talked about how he knew Sylvia literally the longest over anyone else since they walked into their real world house together. TJ announces that the winners of the elimination secures a spot in the Oasis, and this shocks a bunch of the house. But also, the only people in the elimination are allowed to see the elimination, so it's kind of like what happened with the Exile eliminations during the Fresh Meat seasons. Nicole goes after Sylvia for being a liar, and Sylvia mentions that her life will be the same after this, and she'll sleep fine after this, and she hopes that Nicole's girlfriend breaks up with her. And I just found that to be very hilarious with the way she says it. Tony mentions that he walked into Chicago with her, their relationship will never be the same again, and she knows his life situation, and I'm assuming that he's referring to the children that he has or is pregnant with, and she apologizes to Tony, but mentions that she doesn't give a shit about Nicole. What I do find interesting is that the champions know the other champions that are on the cast, and Laura is living in Montana at this point, which is where Carmaria lives and where she moved to due to her relationship with Abram. So it showed how close they were even after free agents. Shane speaks to Sylvia about how her season was using her as a pawn, and he does feel bad for Sylvia. Tony, Bruno, and Nicole are still furious about Sylvia, and we have Marie and Effie talking about how they want to spend more time together. The elimination is called In the Trenches, where they have to retrieve 10 sandbags from the other side of the trenches, where the partner is doing the same thing. I actually do really like this elimination, but Kayla beats Marie and Tony beats Bruno. Anthony makes it very clear that he is going to be voting for Sylvia every time, and Anthony is. I'm referring to Tony when I said Anthony, since that technically that is Tony's middle name. And the other Anthony, meaning the Are You the One Anthony, is salty that Marie is gone over the skanky Kayla. And that's his words, not mine. Bruno seems very off in a way that is not good for the challenge, so I'm not shocked that he never came back. But apparently, this was the calmer version of him compared to how he was on his Real World season. Sorry for him for being homeless and all, but he really just was not right for the show mentally. Marie definitely had an underwhelming comeback where she had a showmance with Anthony and she mentioned that she did not train whatsoever for the season, for this to be her fate after rejecting so many seasons. At least she's in the rotation for the next few seasons after this. Anika is getting annoyed with people's hygiene and she wants to host her own talk show. Hunter and Ashley are getting very close and she really likes his body, but she's trying very hard not to hook up, and they are close due to being country people. The Daily is shell-shocked where they have to rush to their boats to get coconuts in the checkpoint, and they also have to shoot their coconuts into the nest. But the winning guy chooses the girl going into the elimination, and the winning girl chooses the guy going into the elimination, where the other two nominees will be voted by the house. It's a really fun daily, seeing people falling over their boats and struggling to row it. Hunter and Ashley win the daily and their way into the Oasis, though it was mainly Hunter doing all of the work, which she acknowledges. Hunter calls out Corey, and the two of them are going back and forth, and it's interesting that the two would-be young bucks are arguing, but Corey chose the other side for now, and all three of them get into various arguments throughout the season, which is something that I forgot about. And honestly, when it comes to this argument between Corey and Hunter, I don't even remember the context of what it is, but somehow Corey wants Hunter to give up his spots to go into elimination, which is just really dumb. Tony, Jenna, and Kayla are talking about how they all know that Jenna is getting thrown in, and she is struggling with not being liked for the first time in her challenge career, but she wants to go against Anissa because she feels like that is her best chance. Corey tells Ashley that he wants to go in, but as a house vote where he could choose who he goes against, but by her choosing his opponent, and he also mentions that he wants to go against either Theo or Shane. Corey ends up telling Theo and Shane about how he pitched against one of them, and Shane saw this coming. Anika and Theo are getting ready to go in since she feels confident against Jenna, and they can get to the Oasis together as they're from the same real world season. Corey reports all this back to Jenna, and she's now getting worried because it could be a puzzle, and she doesn't feel confident in puzzles. Shane doesn't want to go in, and Theo is feeling a way that Corey is throwing shade, so now he wants to personally take Corey out. TJ arrives to start the nomination ceremony, where Hunter chooses Jenna with the guys voting in Anika. Ashley chooses Theo, and the girls are voting in Corey. Kayla and Jenna are annoyed with the speech Hunter made about Jenna being associated with Kayla being the reason why Jenna is being nominated, and Anika, Sylvia, and Latoya is hyping Anika up so she could win the elimination. Anyways, the elimination is Who's Got Balls, where they all have to grab all the balls into their basket and jump down from the string or whatever. And whomever holds all of their balls stays, but it ends up being, sorry, if it is a tie, it'll be broken based off of the time, i.e., who makes it down quicker. Theo doesn't end up jumping, despite all the shit he was talking throughout the episode, so Corey obviously wins, and Jenna does beat Anika by apparently 2 seconds. I heard, allegedly, that this was allegedly rigged when it comes to the woman, and Anika allegedly, supposedly won it. But because Zach was coming into the season and he wasn't together with Jenna, they wanted to see that story play out. All this is allegedly. The majority is not pleased that they lost 2 more numbers, and the minority hasn't left at all yet. And of course, Corey tells them all about Theo Quiddy, where a bunch of them are clowning him. I don't really have anything to say about Anika, as she was just there throughout the season, didn't really bring much anything either, and she's apparently like that on her real world season. She seems nice, but I'm not crying to see her back, but it does suck that if they rigged it against her, and that's an emphasis on if. Theo's just utterly pathetic. Obviously, quitting is horrible, but to be so cocky and doing all that trash talking before that was just even lamer. And I've heard that apparently he's been begging to come back to the show in recent years. I'm fine with both of them going here and never coming back. Sin, Shane, Anthony, Amanda, Sylvia, and Latoya are the only ones who do not have their tickets to the Oasis. Nelson is feeling Latoya and Corey is feeling Kayla, where the two of them are talking about their crushes to one another. Amanda is talking to Nelson about her father, who had a stroke right after they got eliminated last season, so the elimination was a blessing in disguise for her. Corey and Kayla are making out, and to me it seems like they were trying to revive slash rehash the obnoxious Johanna and Kenny make out on the beach during the island. Latoya and Nelson are vibing a lot, and they are ready to continue whatever this is when they get to the Oasis, though we see them making out under their nests, which everyone gives them claps for, and they continue making out on the beach floor, which is even more obnoxious than Corey and Kayla's making out, groping one another, and it's way past the PG rating. It is the daily, where the final 6 have to compete in Cage and Confused, where they are in cages that spin to the floor, and then they have to roll over the cage so they can get the key to unlock themselves. And I do like this daily, though they must have gotten a bunch of bruises here. Shane is yelling at Latoya to get it together, as she initially has the lead, but it ends up with Amanda winning the daily and getting her spot, so Sylvia and Latoya are automatically going to elimination. Anthony gets to his key first, but struggles and Shane ends up winning the daily with Nelson and Anthony going right to the elimination. Nelson is really down on himself for losing and is embarrassed, so Latoya is trying to cheer him up and she's hoping that they both make it through tonight. The four of them go into elimination, which is called tie rise, my bad, where they have to climb 1,000 feet, tie stairs, grab a bag, bring it down, and put whatever it is in the bag in the hook. Honestly, it might not be 1,000 feet, maybe it's 100 feet, but that's besides the point. And they are doing this individually. Sylvia and Nelson do end up winning the elimination, sending Latoya and Anthony home. I don't have much to say about Anthony. He got into a quick romantic Marie, which gave him a spot on X on the Beach, but he didn't do anything in his final 2 episodes, so I'm not shocked he didn't come back. If being on X on the Beach didn't get him interested or get him interest from the challenge producers, it's clear that he's done overall with the show. Latoya didn't have a lot to do, though she also had a showmatch with Nelson this season, while still being pretty funny herself, but she didn't get as much screen time as she did in Free Agents. While she's a good character when it comes to being funny, she is an example of not being a good competitor slash getting a few early boots will get you phased out, though this isn't her last season. When Nelson and Sylvia arrive back, they all go to the Oasis and they are celebrating like hell. We end the episode with Hunter and Ashley getting ready to have sex, but Dario and Nelson hilariously cockblock them. They're getting prepared for the next daily, only for TJ to announce that they have to face off with the 8 champions. Knockout is the daily where the two teams have to go after one another, launch a ball, and squirt in the net. And some of the rounds will be alternated between the underdogs or the champions, pertaining offense and defense. Overall, this daily was pretty fun, and we needed a good headbanger of some sorts. The underdogs win out of the women and the men, but because there is an underdog elimination, Ashley and Dario, the two people who chose a score or whatever, have to choose people to go into the elimination. Ashley chooses Dhoni and Daria chooses Sylvia because she earned her spots last. Though Sylvia thought that she's going to be safe since Kayla and Jenna are hated and are on the other side, but I think it just shows a continuing trend of Dario not being strategic at all. The champions move into the house, and we have Bananas and Camilla arguing over the bed, where Zach mentions that women and men should not cohabitate. Darrell and Shane have a reunion after a decade since they last did Fresh Meat and they did their Road Rules season together way back when. Nicole is very attracted to Carmaria, and Carmaria does not feel the same way at all. CT talks about being a small town, quiet person now, as he is now a father, and then we see Zach and Jenna reunite after their breakup. Jenna still wants to be with Zach, and Zach is hoping that he can keep himself in control, but Jenna's ass is too tempting. Tony tells Kayla that she is probably going to be the other person nominated, and Sylvia and Amanda are pissed off that Dario chose her, causing Dario and Sylvia to go back and forth, and he picked her because he thought she was weak, and that the house was going to vote in Kayla anyways. Shane speaks to the woman because he knows the guys don't like him and they want him out. Dario is into Ashley K. Now I have to use surnames now, which yay. And Corey is telling some of the others that they need to unite as one team. And Shane does not want to vote based on how Corey wants to. So the two of them are arguing about it, and Corey thinks that Shane and the others are being pussies since they want to just get to the final and to not win. Corey tells the woman about what is happening, and Jenna and Kayla want the divide to stop now since the champions are here now and they, as underdogs, need to work together. There's a team meeting, and the champions are just eavesdropping, where Nelson hosts the meeting that accomplishes absolutely nothing, and there's a bit more bickering. Kayla gets drunk, and she and Corey hook up in the washroom. The champions get info from Tony about the dynamics of the underdogs, and Ashley reaffirms what he said, but spins it differently. Dario flirts with Ashley K, and then we move on to a drunk Kayla being put to bed by Nicole. Tony gets Corey to get Kayla up as she is peeing in her sleep, where there's a stream coming down. Corey is turned off by Kayla now, and they speak the next morning. Since someone being blacked out to the point of peeing just isn't it for him for now. Kayla hears Corey complaining about her to Amanda, and it seems like he's putting the same thing on Kayla that he did to Anissa on Bloodlines, and Kayla is crying to Nicole and Jenna. Paul is joking around with Cara Maria, who is very aware of Nicole's crush on her, and they are having a muscle off, which turns into a bunch of wrestling. Nicole doesn't even know what Cara Maria is sexually, but she likes the challenge, which says a lot, and it's honestly very gross. And then Zach and Jenna have a conversation, and old times are starting to form again between the two of them, where Shane is asking them about their history together. Zach acknowledges that he's a horrible boyfriend, but it seems like he wants her back. Corey moves from a different bed since he still isn't here for the pee, and Kita moves to him to confront him about it, so they end up hooking up on Corey's mattress on the floor, which is so lovely. Nelson tries to get with Sylvia, and she shuts him down because Latoya literally just left, though I don't think that's the reason why. I just think she isn't into Nelson. Nelson is throwing chairs and stuff around the house, and it's a horrible look, which is probably just another example as to why Sylvia does not want him. Tony is talking about being sober, and he sees a lot of his quote-unquote old self of himself in Nelson. And we'll hear a lot about this in the next few seasons about Tony's quote-unquote old self and his quote-unquote new self. So we have a conversation between Tony and Camilla, and they buried the hatchet after their issues from last season, which will definitely lead into their hookup next season. And she caught up on the dynamics. She is caught up in the dynamics with the underdogs. We catch up on Dad CT, and then we see Jenna and Zach on the bed together. So things are clearly going in that direction, though people like Laura and Camilla are judging the relationships in their confessional. And we see them make other commentary about it throughout the season. It is a nomination ceremony where the House votes Kayla and Shane, and I'm honestly shocked Corey didn't get a vote, despite him being on that side. Shane calls out Tony for wanting to go against someone who looks weak, but he made a mistake because Shane is the opposite of weak, and that is what Shane is claiming. What would become the Lavender Ladies gives Sylvia and Shane advice on how to beat the elimination, where the other side is doing the same thing for Tony and Corey. The elimination is tuk tuk bang, where they have to push the tuk tuk across the edge, and the first person who completes it wins. Sylvia beats Kayla, and Shane beats Tony, and Corey is already planning on who he will hook up with next. Tony and Kayla definitely had underdog rounds on the season, though they definitely facilitated it, and I definitely found them to be pretty entertaining. Tony supposedly turned a new leaf, and while he wasn't drinking, he was still messy as hell, which is always fun to watch, but the thing is, he just isn't a great competitor. I did enjoy Kayla's I don't give a crap attitude, and her romance with Corey was definitely trashy, but she isn't as tough of a competitor as she bragged that she was, and this is something that kind of follows her throughout her career. The big underdog alliance is happy that the other side is essentially neutralized, and Corey and Shane are fighting about the sites that were created that Corey helped facilitate. And Corey is complaining about he doesn't have a relationship with most of the women in the house. And they are the ones who controls the votes for the guys. Shane mentions that he doesn't care about a strong team where he wants to make it to the final, and most of the vets are actually siding with Shane on this. People are talking about how Bruno and Jenna hooked up on the plane ride to the season. Corey tells Jenna that the Lavender ladies are repeating this to the vets, and Jenna is mad at Bananas for believing it, and she calls Amanda out about it. Who effing cares? Bunch of the women are talking about the men's asses, and Cara Maria is talking about how she hasn't been with anyone since Abram, where they are officially over, and she wants to be single so she can figure stuff out. Where Hunter is flirting with Cara Maria, and Ashley overhears this, which sends Ashley on a spiral. Ashley calls out Hunter for flirting with Cara Maria and ignoring her in the process, and things between them really just aren't going that well. Camilla thinks that Ashley is delusional and refers to the moment last season where she made the incorrect assumption that Jamie and Nicole were hooking up. Laurel and Jenna are talking about the rumor, and Laurel thinks that they should talk, since he won't approach her after the season is done anyways. So essentially, get the closure while you can, is Laurel's advice. The daily is roll with the punches, where they are in guy girl pairings and they are rolling in the spinning device that they are in. I forgot to mention that the two teams are fighting for money, so kind of like the first two eras that had teams had this. And it is the champions elimination, but the pair that wins for the champions will win immunity. The champions win the daily, with Laura and Bananas getting immunity, and he went twice specifically so he can have a better chance of gaining immunity. Laurel nominates Zach, and he mentions the free agents moment in the final, and Bananas nominates Carmuya as they still don't like one another. Jenna is sad that Zach is nominated, and she is still thinking about the Bruno stuff, since to her it looks bad, though they weren't together, so I don't get how this would look bad. At the nomination ceremony, Ashley and Darrell are nominated, and I'm not giving any more time to this Bruno Zach Jenna mess, since it is really a nothing burger. The elimination is pole wrestle, as the champions will do classic eliminations this season, and we have Cara Maria beat Ashley and Darrell beat Zach. Zach comes off as almost likable this season, though I think it's because he knew how horribly he came off on his last season, which was about other exes too, and it was added that he cheated on Jenna in between seasons, so he wanted to improve his rep. Also, him being an early bird contributed to not being annoyed with him. Ashley was a random choice on this season, though I think it's because a lot of the women champions retired around this time, so she was thrown in. She only had her hookup with Dario, and they apparently dated after this. They are on All Stars 5 together, so we'll see that dynamic and how it is 8 years later. But I really don't have anything to say about her here. Cast is partying at the club, and Bananas is giving Dora props for winning 4 seasons in a row, where Corey wants to get in Camila's Brazilian butt, where they didn't waste any time in hooking up. Kayla literally just left not long ago. Amanda, Ashley, and Sylvia are wondering what the other side is talking about, as Shane is currently having a conversation with Nicole and Camilla. Curry Up is the daily where they have to drink the curry soup and they grab a puzzle piece where the soups get spicier. It's one of the few eating challenges that don't gross me up, so props to the show for actually making me like an eating challenge. Shane is annoying the hell out of his team for motivating slash yelling at them, but Hunter and Nicole get immunity out of the underdogs. The champions end up winning, and Bananas is just being obnoxious as hell in his victory, causing for Hunter and Nelson to yell at him, which just gives him even more fuel. Nicole makes a deal with Shane so they won't go in, and somehow Dario moved onto Corey, Nicole, and Jenna's side. Sylvia tells her team to vote her into elimination since she knows that she's still one of the people that caused them to lose the challenge. Hunter chooses Jenna and Nicole chooses Nelson to go into the elimination. Nelson calls out Shane for double dealing, and Nelson thinks that it isn't honorable since Dario and Corey offered him a deal and rejected. That just says more about Nelson and his poor gameplay than it does about Shane. A bunch of people call out Shane for his snake ways, and he mentions that he's playing for the team, but it's really just getting nowhere. Dario jumps in, hoping that this would save his ass from going in, though it doesn't. Bananas decides to remove their toilet seat and put it in the lake, and Bananas is clearly doing this for camera time, and it's just so lame. Anyways, Ashley is pissed off since she has no toilet seat and she already feels sick, so she wants to quit. She is kicking out the cameraman, and the producer comes in while Ashley is packing her bags, and this isn't even the first time she does it during the season. Dario and Sylvia are voted into elimination. Bananas tells Sylvia that it is dumb for her to volunteer to go into elimination when she literally just won an elimination, and thinks that she's really doing this because she has checked out. But Sylvia is a woman of her word, so she is doing this. Bell Ringer is the elimination where they have to knock their Thai idols in the bell. Nelson beats Daria and Jenna beats Sylvia. Camilla, Laura, and Carmaria pull a prank on Ashley and Amanda, which involves putting chips in Ashley and Amanda's bed, and they are not taking it well. Ashley accuses Hunter of doing it because he is laughing, and the three of them are just yelling at one another, where the champions are just laughing at all three of the rookie newbies. Dario was not as interesting this season than he was in his other seasons, as he mainly just had his romance with Ashley, and then the mess with Shane, but it seemed like he was slowly moving on to his career anyways. And we just also saw how he isn't good at the strategic elements of the game. He has one more season after this, and it isn't a good one. Sylvia ended up turning on her real world skeletons people in the beginning, and then was thrown into a few more eliminations, so she kind of had an underdog role, though you could tell that the political part of the game was really one that she felt guilty about and she didn't know how to handle it. I don't think she would have offered much else to the season, so her going here is fine for me. It is a costume party, and Nicole is feeling Maria, but she also thinks Laura is attractive too. And while she doesn't know or care about if Laura has ever been with a woman before, she thinks that she can turn Laurel into a lesbian. And for the fact that as a homosexual woman, the fact that she's even stating that you can turn someone who isn't homosexual into a homosexual, you would think that she would realize how problematic this is and how that kind of takes away from the plight of the community. Anyways, Laurel is talking to Camilla about her sexuality, where she is feeling those vibes with Nicole, and she's been curious about it in the past, but pressures from the social norm caused her to suppress it, and her father is also very strict. I also do remember during the rewatch watching and could kind of see some of those hints as well. Laurel also mentions that Maria is into girls too, but she doesn't care what people think. Laurel and Nicole are getting close, and Carmaria is glad that she and Laura are good friends now, and remain such after that whole free agents mess. Carmaria is licking Nicole's abs, and Nicole thinks that Carl looks better than Laurel, and Laurel is annoyed with Nicole rubbing it in her face. Laurel doesn't want to dance with Nicole when she is approached by Nicole, since if Nicole is interested in Carmilla, she should stay over there. Laurel tells Amanda that she did the chips, and Amanda thinks that it is childish, though Laurel thinks that it is funny. Amanda is saddened because she actually had respect for Laurel out of all the women, but that is essentially gone now. Amanda kicks Laurel out of the room, and Laurel tells her to shut up, and the both of them are yelling at one another. And it's great since both of them give that same energy. Camilla is trying to defend Laurel, and she calls her a freckled motherfucker, and she can't prey on people. And Amanda is a wasp. Sorry, she calls Amanda a wasp. And the two of them are continuing to go after Amanda, and it's really just a great watch. Laurel tells Amanda that she is a tiny motherfucker, so she better back up, essentially. And Camilla chases after Amanda. It is an entire mess, and everyone is following them around the house to see the antics. Camilla is really cringe-worthy with how she's chatting to the cameras, though none of the champions really feel bad for Amanda. Amanda yells at Camilla for having a speech impediment and is fat as fuck. Camilla isn't fat. So Camilla ends up taking off her clothes and twerking to prove that she isn't fat, and all this is just so trashy. Jenna and Camilla call out Nicole for being shitty, and she needs to choose between one of them, where Nicole refuses to do that. The daily is Fallout, where they have to grab the rope and hold on to it until the platform in the sky tips over. It is a mad daily, and the underdogs win the daily, with Shane sacrificing himself to knock over the vet men, with Camilla winning out of the woman as well. So essentially, Carm, Maria, and Laura are going into elimination, since there's no one else. And CT is also winning out of the men, so Darrell and Bananas are automatically going into the elimination as well, since there's no one else. The two winningest men are sharing a drink for going in, and the two women are silent about it, though they mention that Nicole is just playing with it. Jenna also tells Nicole that she is the first woman Laurel has ever gained a crush on. Laurel tells Nicole that it is clear that the latter is into Cara Maria and not her. Nicole says otherwise, to Laurel's face at least, and Laurel does mention that she does like her. Camilla also speaks to Nicole about it, where it's clear that Cara Maria just sees it as fun, where Laurel is actually a lot more open to it, and Nicole essentially fucked it up. The friends play balls in, where one person is playing offense to get the ball in the net, and the defense has to stop it from happening. Doral beats Bananas and Laura beats Carmilla, where Nicole wasn't even rooting for Laura to come back. They ended on a cliffhanger, but I don't have time for that BS, so I just skipped over it. This is one of Bananas' most forgettable seasons, and this is technically an early boot for him. He continues his I am a head honcho mantra throughout this season, without there really being anything new or interesting to it, or a different twist to it. I really just don't have much to say about him, which is rare. Cara Maria definitely had the weird situation with Nicole, where she did not want the latter at all and is trying to not let her friendship with Laurel get ruined, though it only gets worse after she left the house, and it never repaired again, but we'll get more into that at the reunion. This is also one of the few seasons where Carmilla is actually single, so that was nice to see. Cole is so fucking gross, where she's still talking in the confessionals about Cara Maria is her main over Laurel, knowing that they would see this. Corey and Camilla are dancing in the strip club, and Laurel is dancing around with other people, and she's hoping to get a reaction out of Nicole, but Nicole isn't giving a reaction, where she ends up telling Jenna that she likes Cara Maria. This ends up with Laura and Nicole arguing about their dysfunction, since she tries to get with her friend, so Nicole needs to stay away from her. That's Laura's vantage point. Shane talks to Ashley about Hunter being the biggest douchebag ever, and Hunter has told people that he has left the Alliance. What a dumb thing to do, in my opinion. Shane calls Hunter out for being a dirtbag and claims that Ashley said that he used her, but they're getting in one another's faces, which continues when they're on the bus ride, with them going back and forth. Hunter ends up throwing out that Shane made a deal behind his girl's back. Hunter yells, "Who can beat me? No one here can beat me!" in his high-pitched ass voice, and it's just hilarious. Ashley is sad about the situation, and Amanda mentions that Shane is making things worse and is hiding behind it, where Shane mentions that Hunter was also talking trash about her. Amanda pulls Hunter into the room, and the two men continue to go at one another, where Hunter calls out Shane for his messy web weaving antics, and Shane mentions that he politicked with Ashley when it was convenient. Shane mentions that he is a dirtbag, but Hunter is pretending like he isn't, which is the problem, and that is what Shane is calling out. Shane is ranting to Darrell about how dumb these newbies are, and it's hilarious to watch the two oldies, or the Era 1 people just talk about this. We have some more Nicole and Laurel arguing, where Nicole mentions that she said that she liked Carmia more as a joke, but the two of them got through it and things are good between them. Ugh, and these two exhaust me already. The daily is crossover, where they are walking through a driving platform where they have to go through all of them to grab a flag, and it is a non elimination for the underdogs. It is a really good daily and a dangerous one. The underdogs win the challenge, and everyone is having fun going to some outside house party where everyone is getting along. All this was a hoax, since TJ arrives to tell them that they are packing, since there are too many underdogs in the house, and a decent amount of them are about to get cut. And that is where the episode ends. A bunch of the underdogs are talking about their dreams with the money, like Hunter wanting to open a gym for people with disabilities and other stuff like that. And we see Coy and Camilla hooking up yet again, but they're both using one another as booty calls. Nicole and Carmaria are getting close. Whoa! Nicole and Laurel are getting closer with one another, and Laurel is embracing her first girl experience slash relationship. CT, Shane, and Darrell talk about how he needs to prepare for the bloodbath and strength, 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 strength. But Shane knows that strength, 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 strength is a weakness for him. And it's really cool seeing these three Era 1 guys just bond, and you see a lot of background shots of them as well. Exit is the daily where they have to individually grab puzzle pieces where they are attacked or attached to a T, but the puzzle pieces are in a bunch of bags. The last two people, one for each gender, will be purged after the challenge, and this is the very first purge on the challenge history, and this will be a consistent thing throughout Era 4 up until the present day as I am recording this. And everyone else will be competing in the elimination, where two more people will go. The vets predict that Nicole and Hunter will be the ones that are purged here since they are not good at puzzles. The men perform horribly in this as it took them an hour and a half, but Hunter does end up getting purged out of the game, and Jenna does get purged out of the women. Hunter definitely had a lot of heart, and he didn't take losing well. He can definitely hold his own as a competitor, but he really isn't good at the non-physical element. He definitely got into his fair share of drama in the season, and his romance with Ashley is important, but the politics and all that just is a mess for him. Honestly, I'm getting tired of Jenna. Her dim-wittedness really isn't funny. I didn't care for the whole Bruno Fingergate situation, and her reuniting with Zach I didn't care for as well. And she was easily the least interesting slash visible person from her side of the house. Apparently, she was an alternate who made it on, and this happened a few times with her as well around this point of time in her challenge career. Ashley and Amanda make fun of Nicole and Jenna for being so dumb, and we learn about how close Corey and Nelson got after last season, despite them being on opposite sides here and them conveniently mentioning this now, out of all times in the season. And it's clear that this segment is setting up something that will be important in the elimination and in the episode. Inside Out is the elimination where three people are playing in an elimination for the first time ever, and it's essentially the first tug of war. And it's interesting because there are three people attached to it instead of two. This is a really good one, and it shows who has the best endurance, especially with going against two opponents. Ashley and Amanda work together to pull Nicole to the opposite direction, with Amanda getting the first round, and Nicole is pissed as she takes her pot shots at them after the first round. And then the remaining two have to pull themselves out of the ring by pulling some pole. And of course, Nicole beats Amanda here, though it is actually pretty close, since Amanda used her wit to get across instead of pure strength. Both Corey and Shane make individual deals with Nelson to screw over the other, but Nelson double crosses the both of them, so he gains the safety. Corey and Nelson get into a huge shoving match. I am not messing with the to be continued bullcrap that they insert at the end of the episode. And in the final round, Corey obviously beats Shane. Shane in this season is definitely one of the most interesting people and iterations of people who leaves the show for a while and then comes back. And he's an entirely different person with a lot more life experience. And I believe he was gone for 10 years. I liked how messy and cutthroat he was here, where he let things happen to and around him during his original one, but he brought out a lot more on all elements this season. Amanda came off as a lot more humanized this season, and we learned a lot more about her in general. And she was playing the game more strategically, but she was still very messy, which we saw in her fights with Laura and Camilla this season. But you do start to see her big flaw, which is her lack of self interest and her lack of a killer instinct overall. Champions are shocked that TJ gave them a warning, and there's no mention of the final. Corey confronts Nelson about snaking him, and Nelson was skirting all around it, just like he was during the elimination, blaming that he was only trying to snake Shane. But at the end of the day, it's really pointless since they decide to work together and to move on for the final. We have a segment about Nicole's peanut butter being hidden by Laurel, where Laurel apparently didn't know whose it was because she just got there and someone told her to hide it. And this was hidden like a few weeks ago, and it's really just ridiculous. CT is talking about how he entered the season with the intention of it being his last, but he feels like he's getting a second wind, so he definitely isn't retiring anytime soon, and he's definitely lived up to that. Caved In is the daily where they have to go through a bunch of cages that has a bunch of stuff in it, and they have to get their keys. It's a pretty solid daily in my opinion. The underdogs win the daily, and we have Camilla and Laurel arguing during and after the challenge because Laurel is tired of Camilla's yelling, and it was pretty fun seeing this. We have Laurel and Camilla ranting to the Showmantas about their upcoming elimination, and we have some dysfunction with Laurel and Nicole, who just wants her to listen and not give her actual advice, which just shows the poor dynamic of their toxic relationship. Not so fast is the elimination where they have to tie the rope around the pyramid and then untangle the opponent's pyramid. CT beats Darrell and Camilla beats Laurel, though the latter admitted a few years ago that she threw this. I have to say that Laurel was very interesting this season, with her coming out of the closet and dealing with her suppressed attraction to women for the first time in public. There was tension with Cara Maria that will only get worse by the end of this video and at the reunion, and then her toxic relationship with Nicole that will carry them through the next several reality TV seasons. This is probably Laura at arguably her most likable and vulnerable. Darrell was a nice surprising return where he is now a husband and father, and it really didn't seem like he missed a beat. He was as funny as ever and intentionally laid under the radar. It does seem like this is the last season, at least on the flagship, where he really had the same powers that he did in the past, at least on the flagship point of view, since we all know he does pretty well on All Stars, but he is officially out of retirement, and he's been consistently booked since. They are all in the final, and they celebrate at some private resort, where we see Camille and Corey making out at the club, which Nicole is not happy with since she just lost Laurel. Ashley is feeling away since she's the only one out of her alliance still there, where Corey has been aligned with Nicole and Nelson the entire season. Ashley threatens to quit yet again, and I believe this is the second time on camera where she tried to quit the season, and I wouldn't be shocked if there are more times that she did on the season that just didn't make it on air. Where she pushes the cameraman away from her, and she smacks Nelson's hat off as he rightfully lays into her for her shitty attitude. And he calls her out about it because she has no one, and Ashley's claiming that they are talking about her. And to be honest, I actually don't think that they were. A note shows up, and everyone is talking about how it is the 2-year anniversary of DM's death, where they're doing some sort of ceremony/celebration where they are supposed to let go of the past. And it does kind of come off as tacky because what they're trying to indicate is that CT should let go of DM, and they want him to do that on camera. TJ tells them that the final is 3 days long, and this is the first final in the era where they are not changing locations, which is a sign that the era is ending, and I don't think they change locations ever again for the final. Anyways, the teams are over for the final, so the best guy and the best girl are going to win the season, but they'll be paired up with different players for the final. The first pairs are Ashley and Nelson, Corey and Nicole, and CT and Camilla, where they have to retrieve keys in the ocean to open a puzzle box to complete it. CT and Camilla are in first, Ashley and Nelson are in second, with Nicole and Corey being in third for day one, but they have to spend the rest of the season in the shelter. After an hour, they have to get the water from the coconuts to pour into a box, and whomever wins it can add time to their opponents to make them behind, which Corey and Nicole won, where they get 5 minutes to CT and Ashley. Ashley and Nicole are arguing because the latter doesn't like her and thinks that Ashley doesn't deserve to be there, where Ashley mentions that Nicole is idiotic for not sabotaging the woman who is in first, and I agree 100% with Ashley. Corey and Camilla are getting snugly in the shelter, but then we get to day two, where Ashley and CT, Corey and Camilla, and Nelson and Nicole are paired together, where they have to run to complete a stacking puzzle, and then they have to do a bunch of eating. They then have to walk across a tightrope where I don't think anyone. Actually, no. Nelson and Nicole do complete it, but everyone else fails. Ashley and CT get first for day two, and Nicole and Nelson get second for day two, with Corey and Camilla getting last for day two. Corey and Camilla are arguing about crashing out after they completed day two, so their romance is completely dead by this point. But they have to put beads in a barrel on a string, where there is no time limit to complete it. Nicole and Nelson get last in this, Corey and Camilla get second, and Ashley and CT get first, where Nicole gets 5 minutes and Nelson gets 5 minutes. We move on to day three, where the partners are Ashley and Corey, Nelson and Camilla, and Nicole and CT, where they have to carry a bunch of buckets on a stick, and then they have to kayak 10 miles, where CT and Nicole arrive first, Nelson and Camilla arrive second, and Ashley and Corey arrive in third. The final stage is individual, where they jump from the hangboard onto a boat. Onto the ocean, and they then have to swim to the coast. So they need to hang on longer, so they can have to swim less. Where Camilla and Nelson arrive first, Corey and Nicole arrive second, and CT and Ashley arrive third. Overall, I do think this is a pretty good final, and it ends up with Corey and Nicole getting third place for the season, Nelson and Camilla getting second place, and CT and Ashley winning the season at first place. Rory had two showmances this season with Kayla and Camilla, and it was interesting to watch him work with the Tony side of the house while having some drama as well, with the Young Bucks not really being a formed thing yet. It's clear that finals aren't his thing with how he performed this season, but it's clear that production is pushing him a lot around this point in time. Nicole herself isn't boring at all, and she had a drama with Sylvia, Ashley, and had her romance slash drama with Laurel, which parlayed to Cara Maria as well. But she herself really isn't likable. Her commentary about turning quote unquote straight women lesbians grossed me out, and she appeared creepy and entitled. Camilla was still pretty cringe this season with her obnoxious fight with Amanda, as well as the twerking and taking off her clothes, and her romance with Corey is something. And it's interesting that Camilla is supposedly, actually not supposedly, Camilla is racist towards black people, but she hooked up with Corey, so clearly she doesn't see Corey as a black man. But it is odd that people kind of knew about Camilla's racist rhetoric even by this time, but Corey felt comfortable hooking up with her. But that's something else that I could unpack for another day. But in general, Camilla had a pretty strong performance this season, and I'm glad that her time on the show is coming to an end. Nelson had a huge season here, where we learned so much about him regarding his upbringing, wanting to prove himself, and he brought the drama from the very beginning with his feud with Tony to the end with Corey. He even had moments with Shane as well, and he had a romance with Latoya too, and his cringe moments with Sylvia that went nowhere. Ultimately, he also came off as very horrible at various points in time in the season as well. Ashley is definitely someone who really wasn't likable, as she threw a quitting tantrum more than once, but I do like how selfish she was in her gameplay. I enjoyed the Lavender Ladies, and her romance with Hunter was a train wreck, but it was not a total disaster yet. But she did make it through. Seeing Dad CT was interesting, and him coming back to the show for the first time post DM was interesting as well. In general, he was just very chill, cool, and laid back, and he had his humorous moments here and there, but he got a second win and his first individual win, so props to him. Ramirez is hosting the reunion, and CT is talking about his dad bod and being a father, and Nelson talks about being beat by 2 minutes, where Mike talks to Corey about not being good at finals. And apparently, Mike won the same puzzle in the battle of the season's final that they did in the Invasion's final. It had been 7 years since Daryl took to retirement, and there's a lot of talk about the underdog hookups. Nicole shows up to the reunion. I don't know why they introduced her after everyone else. It was just very weird. And we get to see the mess with Laurel, Carmaria, and Nicole. Laurel and Nicole are still together as they've been dating for 5 months, and Carmaria told Nicole that they were never going to be together, though they did flirt with one another, which Carmaria acknowledged, and Nicole made it known how she felt. Laurel talked about how she always wanted to hook up with women, but she did not do it due to outside pressure. But DM's passing taught her to do what she's afraid to do, and it was scary to do that on TV. Cara Maria is offended that Laurel did not reach out to her after they were both eliminated, as that's something that they apparently did in prior seasons. And Laura mentions that she blocked Carmaria from Nicole's phone and they don't talk anymore because she didn't appreciate Carmaria's social media antics. Cara Maria mentioned that Laurel never told her that she liked women throughout their entire friendship and for most of the season. So when the whole Nicole thing happened right before Cara got eliminated, she was shocked. And I found this to be interesting. And earlier in the season, Laurel mentioned that Carmaria has an interest in women. So Carmaria had to have told Laurel that. So just from adding 1 plus 1 and equalizing it into two, I'm assuming that Carmaria told Laurel that she has an interest in girls, and a part of her feels betrayed because Laurel never told Carmaria that she had an interest in girls as well, and that could have been something that bonded them together. So that adds another layer towards their dynamic. So we move on from that part of it, and they talk about how they don't want to hook up with one another. This is in reference to Nicole and Carmaria. And Carmaria admitted that she did reach out to Nicole to ask her what happened with Laura and Nicole. Laura and Carmaria are going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth about how Carmaria knew about how Laura felt about Nicole, and they aren't friends anymore. And this will not be the end of their ever long feud, though they will never become friends after this. Corey's romancing this season is talked about, as well as Ashley and Hunter. Jenna admits that she kissed Bruno on the plane, and Amanda is annoyed that she was made to look like a liar, though Jenna mentions that there's no finger banging whatsoever. Jenna and Zach dated for a few months after the season, and he ghosted her yet again, for they haven't spoken in a month and a half. Laurel tells Jenna that Zach is not worth it, and we all know this doesn't last, based off of their current standing as I'm recording this, and the children that they have created. Corey admits that he did like Camilla, and Kayla says that Corey told her after the season that he does not like her. And I'm assuming this is in reference to Kayla. The two of them are arguing about what happened between them postseason. Corey said that he only hooked up. Sorry. Kayla says that Corey told her that he only hooked up with Camilla once, so he lied, and apparently Kayla and Corey talked about them planning to get together after the season. But that didn't happen, and Corey mentions that she now has a boyfriend, so he doesn't get why Kayla is pretending to care. Ashley outs that she and Nelson hooked up because she could tell that they're going to expose it in the reunion. And one thing I like Ashley is that she's going to spill her own tea before anyone else gets to spill it for her. And this causes Hunter and Nelson to argue where Hunter really doesn't give a shit about Ashley, as he says that girls can be replaced, which shows his brilliant mentality. And Hunter calls out Nelson for being a shitty friend, as they've been friends since their Are You the One season. Nelson mentions that it was only a kiss, and he isn't sorry for it. And of course, Corey defends Hunter. And it's interesting that Nelson and Ashley had this connection or attraction here, as we all know that they mess with one another again in Spies, Lies, and Allies, which happened about like 4 to 5 years after this. We do see Kayla and Corey arguing backstage, and she tells him that she hates him and that she doesn't appreciate that he's trying to make it seem like there's nothing between them, and she has the right to feel hurt about how things went between them. So we move on from that. Amanda shades Camilla for being a whore, as she hooked up with Vince last season, and Camilla twerks again, and she does it a few more times, and I'm horrified every single time she does it. The Amanda, Camilla, and Laura fight is talked about here, which causes for Camilla and Amanda to argue more and more and more, and honestly, I am bored of it now. Amanda ends up smacking Camilla when Camilla gets in her face, and Camilla wants Amanda to hit her again. The three-way elimination is talked about where Corey and Nelson are about to scrap again, and these two are effing psychos. Where Nelson says that wouldn't have Nelson says that Corey wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for him. Corey found this to be absolutely absurd, which only gets them even more angrier. And Bananas actually gives Nelson props for being scrappy and selfish, and mentions that Corey needs to learn from this and to implement some of that for himself. My opinion on this season most definitely dropped where during my first watch, I had it in the upper echelon of the season rankings that I had in my head. But the thing is, my opinion on it weakened as I saw more and more issues with the formatting, and the TV continued actively ruined things even more for me this season. I do think that the cast is a very good one. We learned a lot about the newcomers, and these would be the people who carried into a lot of the era for a season. So I did see the importance in that. And there's definitely a lot of good drama here that would carry through the next few seasons. And I noticed that staples of Era 3 were starting to wither away here, like the location change, which is no longer a thing. Like I mentioned, they kind of started the TV continues with last season, but it continued here as well. And also, another thing they forgot to mention is the themed seasons based off of relationships ended with Werewolves 3, as this season wasn't about relationships at all when it came to the theme of the season and the casting. And that would continue with 3030 and Era 4, where it would be rare for there to be a themed season like Werewolves 3 or even A Ride or Dies. So that was kind of winding down here. In general, I do think it would have been cool to see the champions and the contenders go at one another a bit more. And I do think the season gets a bit less interesting once they leave the shelter. I do think that since a lot of the storylines don't really carry through. But despite that, there are still some good and funny moments throughout the second or the last two-thirds of the season. And to be honest, I didn't really care too much for the 3-day final. Though I like the final in itself, the 3 days and having it split into 3 episodes, I just don't care for at all. Honestly, I don't even have a whole lot to say about the season compared to some of the other reviews of this era, and I think that's also kind of a problem as well. It's just solid, decent, good, but it isn't much else. Anyways, I am definitely glad to be ending Era 3 very soon, and obviously after 3030, I'll be getting into the seasons that I watched live, and it'll be interesting to see how my opinions changed with the Era 4 seasons compared to when I watched it live. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back with more content soon. Bye!